We're checking in with Lindsay Jones, a senior writer for The Athletic and covered the NFL and the Broncos for many, many years now. Lindsay, thank you so much for taking some time to join us.
Sure, Phil. That's a nice way of saying that I'm old. But yeah, Tuesday was the start of my 13th year covering the NFL. So 13 years out of Broncos camp.
Wow, that's a lot of training camps, but maybe none quite like this one. What's it like covering the NFL during a pandemic?
Yeah, it's been really different. And, I think that's just the things that we just have to understand that everything about the 2020 football season is going to be completely different. And the quicker that we all realize that, whether it's players, coaches, media, fans, the quicker we let go of the norms, the things that we're used to, I think the better that it's all going to be for everybody because it's going to look different. Training camp looks different. I think the regular season is going to look different. Game days are especially going to look different. Broadcasts, everything. But I think the important thing is that we're on track to play and that I think there's going to be a season if everybody can keep kind of following all the protocols, both within the teams. And then, here in Denver, I love that when I go to King Soopers, I see everybody wearing their masks. Like, okay, we're going to try to make this happen, at least here in Colorado, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like things have been going well so far. So knock on wood that they can make it to the start of the season. We've heard a lot, no preseason games this year. How do you think that's going to affect things? I know here with the Broncos, Vic Fangio said, we got to do a lot of work in a short amount of time.
Oh, it's huge. And it's not just the lack of preseason games. It's the fact that in 2020, the teams can't have those joint practices. I think right now, this was actually the week that the Broncos should have been having their joint practices, right? I think it was with the Bears that were going to be the joint practices again this year. And across the league, what you found over the last 2 years is that those joint practice times were actually more valuable to teams than the preseason games because they could get much more extensive work for their starters. Their first team offense, their starting quarterback could have so many more reps against a different defense than you would get in a preseason game where they might play 1, 2, 3 series. We're not having the preseason games is going to really hurt is those guys that are, closer to the bottom end of the roster, though, the guys that are really trying to, make the team, that would make the team based on their special teams play. And then also just really that need those live game reps. I know there's a lot of NFL coaches who keep saying, look, college programs don't have preseason games. You guys have been through this. Most NFL coaches have spent some time in college where they've kind of been through this. But it's really going to be a different evaluation process. In fact, there's only 14 practices and pads. That's not a lot of evaluation time. And, so it's going to be really tough for those guys who are on the bottom of the roster, undrafted players who are, who might have had a chance to make the 53 in a normal year. A lot of those guys, their best hope, I think, is going to be making a practice squad in 2020 and finding a way onto the 53-man during the season or, looking forward to 2021.
A lot of the reps going obviously to the starters to get ready for that opener, especially in Denver here. They're trying to learn a new offense. What do you think are some good expectations for Drew Lock here in his second year?
Yeah, I mean, I expect that he's going to be better than last year. I think just the pieces they put around him, it's been really encouraging to see the plan. When I cover anybody in the league and I look at teams around the league, I just really want to see a plan. I want to know what the offensive identity is and what your plan is around your quarterback. And we probably haven't seen that around here a lot over the last, 3, 4, 5 years, really, kind of in the post-Peyton Manning era. But that's clear now. The Broncos know who their quarterback is. They know what type of offense they want to run. They know what their weaknesses were and that they had to get faster to compete in the AFC West. So I like that plan. I like that there is a vision for Drew Lock and a vision for this offense. That said, it's so young and they're so new, a whole new offense, new offensive coordinator. And that's going to be tough for not just the Broncos, but for all the teams around the league that are going through that sort of schematic change. And it's especially tough for Drew Lock where, he only played 5 games last year. You guys, I don't have to reiterate all this stuff. You guys know all of that, but that does put him and the Broncos at a disadvantage compared to some other teams that have more consistency at that position. I feel like every time I do radio hits locally and nationally, when people know that I live in Denver, I think there's a lot of really high expectations for Drew Lock. And you look at quarterbacks who have made this huge jump in year 2, Obviously, the last two league MVPs were guys who won in their second year. I don't think that's fair to Drew. I think we should tamp down those expectations a little bit. I think he'll be better. I think he's going to be a very good starting quarterback in this league. I don't know if he's going to be great in September. That might not be a realistic expectation with as many new pieces and new things that they're trying to work out right now. But for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to watch the Broncos offense.
Yeah, it's nice being in training camp, but not wondering what's going to happen at the quarterback position. Just knowing who's going to be taking that snap is a big relief. The Broncos certainly believe a lot in Drew Lock. They went out and got him a lot of weapons. If you're living here in Denver, you know that Jeudy, so much hype around him. Did you think he was going to be available for the Broncos at 15? And do you think he can live up to all this hype?
Yeah, it's so tough because, picking 15, there's just so much that can happen there, right? With teams trying to move up, moving back. And, there were a lot of mock drafts late, in those days leading up to the draft that had Jeudy going there. And we knew that the Broncos really liked him. I think we've learned since how much they liked him, just how high he was on their board, and how long Jerry Jeudy had been really, really high up on their board. I think even dating back to, the draft evaluation cycle a whole year before, they start looking at the guys who'll come out the next year and weighing who's in this class versus who's in the next class. They love Jerry Jeudy for a very, very long time. What was just interesting about this draft was when the run on wide receivers happened. And, there were a lot of these mock drafts that you saw that run happening, in the late single digits, 7, 8, 9, 10. But the fact that it didn't start happening until kind of the mid-teens, made sense. And it's just really interesting the way that teams evaluated those top receivers in this class. And every team is going to say, we got the guy that we wanted. I truly do believe that the Broncos really wanted Jeudy. But yeah, it's interesting that the way that where the other guys went, that, that the Raiders really wanted Ruggs, and somehow the Cowboys ended up with CeeDee Lamb. I can't believe, I'm still stunned that happened. But obviously Ruggs is like the classic Raiders wide receiver. And then it just made so much sense that the Broncos then would get probably the most polished, well-rounded, best route running guy in that class, which is really what they needed to add to this offense with Drew Lock.
It'll be interesting. Those three are going to be tied together for a long time. Something to monitor there, especially this rookie season. Just a couple more for you here, Lindsay. Von Miller is heading into his 10th season. We've seen him transform his body. He's put on some muscle weight here. How much do you think he still has left in the tank now heading into that 10th season?
Yeah, that was one of the things that we were actually talking about up in the 3OA media area today during practice, was just kind of how pivotal of a year this is for Von Miller. And, this is, it was 2016 that he signed that new contract. And, I don't think he got maybe enough credit for as good of a season as he had last year. I think there was a lot of, maybe looking down on his season last year because his sack numbers weren't where they were going to be, but they asked a lot of him last year. And, I think the fact that they've, Bradley Chubb will be there. I love the Jarrell Casey addition. I think that he's going to have more consistent help around him in that front seven that should ideally help him just focus on rushing the passer. And he is really good against the run. And he's such a well-rounded linebacker. He can drop in coverage. And, I think today I saw him get into the backfield and tackle Melvin Gordon for a loss in the backfield. And that's something that he does that a lot of the top pass rushers in the league don't do. And he doesn't get enough credit for that. But where he's at in his career now at age 31, they kind of just need to let him be a pass rusher, right? Let him, make sure that he's good to go late in games. Don't wear him down on first and second down in the first and second quarter. I think he's motivated. I know he's motivated. I still have a ton of confidence in him. And I know that he has a lot of big goals, individual goals and team goals that he hasn't reached yet. And I would not bet against him. And just looking at the way that defensive group, and especially that front seven, is constructed, I have a lot of confidence that he's going to have a good year.
It feels like year 10, you start thinking about your legacy and where you rank amongst the all-time great pass rushers. So
right, yeah. I mean, he's got to be thinking about things like, will he be a Hall of Famer, and those sorts of things. And I'm not a Hall of Fame voter. It's hard to say, but yeah, but that's what happens after you get to year 10 is how high can he get on the all-time career sack list? I know he's wanted to win that Defensive Player of the Year award, and he hasn't before. And sorry, you're probably hearing my dogs, my dogs barking right now. They wanted to contribute, talking about Von Miller apparently. But yeah, so he's got a lot of those things that that he hasn't quite accomplished that some of his peers, his draft classmate JJ Watt, multiple time Defensive Player of the Year, and eventually these guys are all going to be in the conversation together, in that room at the Super Bowl when they're having the Hall of Fame discussions. And what happens over these next couple of years, I think, will really determine what his overall legacy is. Whereas, all of us, I think here in Denver, we appreciate him so much, but league wide, I think if he can have a 12 to 15 sack season, I mean that would be huge. I mean, that would be huge for the Broncos, and it would be huge personally for Von Miller as well.
All right, last one for you here. We'll put you on the hot seat. Do you think the Broncos make the playoffs in 2020?
Yeah, so I think the expanded playoff field helps the Broncos a lot. I mean, the AFC West is tough, where you kind of right now just have to slot the Chiefs into one of those spots as they're currently constructed. But I like the Broncos better than the other teams in the AFC West outside of the Chiefs right now. And if there's another team getting in, I think the Broncos have a pretty good shot. I mean, I would put them as the number 2 team in that division right now, based on quarterback situation, defensive roster, and then just the new players that they added. So I'll say yes, right now. I mean, August, everybody's optimistic. I think it would be great in Denver if the Broncos could have that sort of bounce back season and finally get back to the playoffs.
No homer bias, right?
No, not at all. It's the only way I'm going to cover the postseason games right now is if they're in Denver, probably, right? So.
Yeah, you root for the home team then. Yeah, good. We like to hear it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about their trajectory, and the seasons are going to be so unpredictable, and this year especially, because there's a whole lot of things that could change this year, week to week to week. I mean, but just you have to look at how rosters are constructed right now, what coaching staffs look like, and I mean, if the Broncos can get to like 9 wins, why not? Why not? They could be a wild card team with 9 wins, I think.
Lindsay, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your insight.
Thanks, Phil. We'll see you back out at Dove Valley in a couple days.